before you check your phone this morning, before you check your messages, before you let the world tell you who you need to be, you already had a conversation. And that conversation, the one you have with yourself every morning, is quietly determining the direction of your life. Good morning. Before you check your phone, before you check the news, before you check what the world wants from you, you need to check what you believe about yourself, because the voice you listen to first in the morning becomes the architect of your future. So today, I want to give you 9 things you must tell yourself every single morning, not when you feel like it, not when it's easy, every morning. 1, I am responsible for my life. Not my parents, not my past, not the economy, not my circumstances. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is power. The moment you accept full responsibility, you reclaim full control. 2, my thoughts shape my outcomes. Your life does not move in the direction of your wishes. It moves in the direction of your dominant thoughts. If you think small, you live small. If you think intentionally, you live intentionally. Your mind is either a tool or a trap. 3, discipline will take me where motivation cannot. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. You don't build greatness on feelings. You build it on habits. Do it tired, do it scared, do it anyway. I will focus on progress, not perfection. Perfection paralyzes. Progress produces momentum. 1 imperfect action today beats 10 perfect plans tomorrow. Movement creates clarity. 5, I'm becoming more valuable every day. Income doesn't grow because you want more money. Income grows because you become more valuable. Skills pay bills. Solutions attract opportunities. Every day, ask yourself, how can I add more value today? 6, I control my reactions. You cannot control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. Emotional control is a superpower. Calm people think clearly. Clear thinkers win. 7, consistency will outperform intensity. You don't need a breakthrough, you need a routine. Success is boring, done daily. Small actions, repeated long enough, create results that look like miracles. 8, I am willing to delay gratification. Short-term pleasure steals long-term greatness. Discomfort today buys freedom tomorrow. Every disciplined decision is a vote for your future self. 9, I am built to win. Not because life is easy, but because you are capable. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You need belief and action. If you tell yourself these 9 things every morning, your mindset will change. Your habits will change. Your results will change. Because the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. So choose your words carefully. They are shaping your future. Identity is always first, whether you choose it intentionally or accept it accidentally. Before you ever take an action, before you ever make a decision, before you ever pursue a goal, you've already decided who you believe you are. And that belief quietly dictates what you attempt, what you tolerate, and what you walk away from. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will quit when resistance shows up. If you see yourself as someone who is learning, failure won't stop you. If you see yourself as someone who wins, obstacles become assignments, not excuses. Identity is the lens through which you interpret everything. 2 people can face the same setback. One says, this is happening to me. The other says, this is training me. The difference is not intelligence, it's identity. Every morning, your brain asks one silent question: what kind of person am I today? And it will look for evidence to support whatever answer you give it. If you tell yourself you're undisciplined, your mind will search for reasons to quit. If you tell yourself you're consistent, your mind will look for ways to continue. Your brain is a servant. It obeys identity instructions. This is why change feels hard for so many people. They try to change behavior without upgrading identity. They say, I want to work harder, but still see themselves as lazy. They say, I want success, but still identify as average. They say, I want confidence, but still rehearse insecurity. Behavior never leads identity. Identity always leads behavior. You don't run because you want to be a runner. You run because you see yourself as a runner. You don't act confident to become confident. You act confident because you've decided internally who you are becoming. And here's the truth most people miss. Your identity is not discovered. It is declared. You are not waiting to find out who you are. You are choosing who you will be. Daily, quietly, repeatedly, every time you keep a promise to yourself, identity strengthens. Every time you break one, identity weakens. That's why small actions matter. They are not small to your identity. When you wake up early once, you didn't just wake up early, you cast a vote for being disciplined. When you finish what you start, you didn't just complete a task, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. And when you repeatedly tell yourself, that's just not me, you lock yourself into a prison you built with words. Identity sets boundaries before life does. It determines what you believe is possible, what you believe you deserve, what you believe is normal for you. And life will never outperform the limits of your self-image. That's why every morning matters. Morning is when identity is most impressionable. Your mind is quiet, your habits are vulnerable, your beliefs are open to reinforcement. What you say to yourself in those first moments becomes the operating system for the day. If you don't consciously install the identity you want, your past will reinstall the old one by default. So every morning you must remind yourself out loud if necessary who you are becoming, not who you were, not who others labeled you, not who circumstances tried to convince you to be identity first, because once identity is clear, decisions get easier, discipline gets stronger, and consistency stops being a struggle. You don't have to force yourself to act in alignment with who you believe you are. You do it naturally. And when identity changes, everything else follows. Nothing in your life changes the moment you find a better excuse. Everything in your life changes the moment you accept greater responsibility. Most people misunderstand responsibility. They think it means blame. It doesn't. Blame looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. Blame asks, whose fault is this? Responsibility asks, what am I going to do about it? The moment you take responsibility, you take back power. Until then, power lives outside of you, in other people, in circumstances, in luck, in timing, in the economy, in your past. As long as you need something external to change before you can move forward, you are not in control of your life. Excuses feel comfortable because they protect the ego. They allow you to stay the same without feeling guilty. But every excuse has a hidden cost. The cost is progress. The cost is growth. The cost is the future you say you want. Every excuse sounds reasonable in the moment. I don't have time. I didn't have the right support. I would have succeeded if things were different. But reasonable excuses produce unreasonable results. They quietly train your mind to believe that success is something that happens to other people under better conditions. Responsible people think differently. They don't ask, why did this happen to me? They ask, what can I learn from this? They don't ask, who failed me? They ask, how can I adjust? They don't wait for perfect conditions because they understand something most people don't. Progress happens in imperfect environments. Responsibility shifts your language. You stop saying I can't and start saying I haven't learned how yet. You stop saying they didn't give me a chance and start saying, how can I create my own opportunity? You stop saying that's just how I am and start saying that's something I can improve. This is where real confidence comes from. Not pretending everything is fine, but knowing you can respond to whatever isn't. When you take responsibility, failure stops being personal. It becomes informational. Every setback becomes data. Every mistake becomes feedback. Instead of defending yourself, you develop yourself. Excuses keep you emotionally safe. Responsibility makes you mentally strong. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can have excuses or you can have results, but you cannot have both. The most successful people are not the ones with the easiest lives. They're the ones who refuse to outsource responsibility for their outcomes. They understand that life is not fair, but it is still theirs to manage. Responsibility means you don't wait to feel ready. You prepare. Responsibility means you don't wait to feel confident. You act. Responsibility means you don't wait for permission. You decide. The moment you stop explaining and start executing, momentum appears. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you stop negotiating with yourself. When you accept responsibility, your standards rise. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer repeat what doesn't work. You no longer blame what you can change. Responsibility sharpens your focus. It forces clarity. It demands ownership. And ownership is the birthplace of leadership. First over yourself, then over your results. If you want a different life, don't look for a better excuse. Look for a better response, because the fastest way to change your circumstances is to take responsibility for how you show up inside them. Power is not created by doing more things. Power is created by focusing on fewer things with greater intensity. Most people are exhausted not because they're working too hard, but because their attention is scattered. Their energy is divided. Their focus is fractured. They are busy everywhere and powerful nowhere. Focus is the ability to decide what deserves your attention, and just as importantly, what does not. Every distraction costs you more than time. It costs you momentum. It costs you clarity. It costs you depth. When your mind is pulled in multiple directions, nothing receives your best thinking, your best effort, or your best execution. Focus creates power because whatever you consistently think about begins to shape your perception. Your mind amplifies what you aim it at. If you focus on problems, they grow. If you focus on limitations, they multiply. If you focus on opportunity, your brain starts searching for solutions. Your mind is not neutral, it is a magnifier. This is why two people can be in the same situation and experience completely different realities. One is focused on what's missing, the other is focused on what's possible. Same environment, different outcomes. The difference is focus. Focus is also what turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Anyone can work hard for a short period of time. Few people can work intentionally on the right thing long enough to master it. Mastery is not a talent issue. It's a focus issue. When you focus, you enter a different mode of operation. Decision-making becomes simpler. Stress decreases. Confidence increases. You stop reacting to everything and start responding to what matters. A distracted mind is always overwhelmed. A focused mind is always in control. Most people don't fail because they lack resources. They fail because they misuse attention. Attention is your most valuable currency. You spend it every day whether you realize it or not. The question is whether you're investing it or wasting it. Focus forces you to say no. No to good opportunities so you can say yes to the right ones. No to noise so you can hear direction. No to urgency so you can build significance. And this is uncomfortable because focus requires sacrifice. You cannot do everything and become exceptional at anything. Focus demands that you let go of being everywhere so you can become effective somewhere. When your focus is clear, your actions align. When your actions align, results compound. And when results compound, confidence becomes inevitable. Focus also protects your energy. When you know what matters, you stop leaking emotional energy into things that don't. You stop arguing with distractions. You stop chasing validation. You stop responding to every opinion. Instead, you move with purpose. A focused person doesn't need external motivation. Clarity creates momentum. When you know what you're building and why it matters, discipline becomes a byproduct, not a struggle. This is why focus creates power. Not loud power, not forceful power, but quiet, consistent, undeniable power. The kind that comes from knowing exactly where you're going and refusing to be pulled off course. When focus becomes a habit, progress becomes predictable. And when progress becomes predictable, success stops being a mystery and starts being a system. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. And structure will always outperform emotion in the long run. Motivation comes and goes. It rises when things are new, exciting, or convenient. It disappears the moment resistance shows up. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. That's why relying on motivation is one of the most expensive mistakes people make. It feels powerful in the moment, but it's unreliable. You don't build a life on something that shows up inconsistently. Discipline is not about intensity. It's about identity-backed commitment. It's deciding in advance who you are and how you operate, regardless of mood, weather, or circumstances. Motivated people wait for the right feeling. Disciplined people act from decision. This is where separation happens. When motivation fades, and it always does, most people stop. Not because they can't continue, but because they never train themselves to move without emotional permission. Discipline removes negotiation from your mind. There is no debate. There is no delay. There is no "I'll do it tomorrow." There is only execution. And execution builds trust with yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, especially when you don't feel like it, you reinforce self-respect. Confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from evidence. Discipline produces that evidence daily. Discipline is not punishment, it's self-leadership. It's choosing long-term gain over short-term comfort. It's understanding that discomfort is temporary, but regret compounds. It's knowing that future freedom is funded by present discipline. Motivation says, "I'll start when I feel ready." Discipline says, "I'll start and readiness will follow." Motivation wants inspiration. Discipline creates consistency. And consistency is what turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Most people overestimate what motivation can do and underestimate what discipline can build over time. Small disciplined actions, repeated daily, quietly outperform dramatic bursts of motivated effort. Discipline shows up early. Discipline finishes what it starts. Discipline doesn't need applause. It understands something critical. Success is not built in moments of excitement, but in moments of resistance. The days you don't feel like showing up are the days that matter most. Those days don't just move the goal forward, they change who you are. Discipline trains your nervous system to handle pressure. It builds emotional control. It creates stability. And stability is what allows growth to scale. When discipline becomes a habit, motivation becomes optional. You stop asking, "How do I feel?" You start asking, "What's required?" That shift alone changes everything. Because disciplined people don't wait for momentum. They create it. And once momentum exists, motivation often follows, not as a requirement, but as a byproduct. Discipline beats motivation because discipline is dependable and dependability I. What builds results you can trust? Most people are asking for rewards before they have earned relevance. They want the money, the recognition, the opportunities, the lifestyle, without first becoming valuable enough to justify them. And that mindset quietly keeps them stuck. Reward is never the starting point. Value is. The marketplace doesn't respond to need. It responds to usefulness. It doesn't pay based on effort, intention, or desire. It pays based on the problems you can solve and the results you can produce. When you understand this, frustration turns into focus. Value is what you bring before you ask. Reward is what comes after. Too many people reverse the order. They say, "Pay me more, then I'll do more." High performers say, "Let me do more, then I'll be worth more." One mindset waits, the other builds. Value creation is a personal responsibility. No one owes you compensation for potential. Potential only becomes valuable when it is developed, applied, and proven. The world doesn't reward what you could do. It rewards what you consistently deliver. This is why complaining is so common and growth is so rare. Complaints are easier than competence. Excuses are cheaper than skill, but neither produces leverage. When you focus on value, your questions change. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What can I solve?" You stop asking, "How do I make more money?" and start asking, "How do I become more useful?" That shift is powerful. Value compounds. Skills stack. Knowledge deepens. Reputation spreads. And eventually reward has no choice but to follow. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. High-value people don't chase opportunities. Opportunities find them. Why? Because value attracts attention. It creates trust. It signals reliability. When people know you can solve problems, they want access to you. Value also creates confidence, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes from knowing you are needed, knowing you can contribute, knowing you can deliver under pressure. Reward without value creates entitlement. Value without immediate reward creates mastery, and mastery always pays in the long run. This is where patience separates professionals from pretenders. Value creation often happens quietly. There's no applause while you're learning, no recognition while you're practicing, no spotlight while you're building skill, but that invisible work is what funds visible success. If you feel underpaid, underappreciated, or overlooked, the answer is not resentment. The answer is expansion, more skill, more consistency, more contribution. The fastest way to increase your reward is to increase your value. So clearly, so undeniably, that compensation becomes a conversation, not a negotiation. Value first. People don't ask for permission to grow. They invest in themselves. They study. They practice. They refine. They show up prepared. They deliver results. And because of that, they become difficult to ignore and impossible to replace. When you commit to value before reward, you stop chasing outcomes and start building foundations. And foundations last. Reward is temporary. Value is transferable. And the person who becomes valuable anywhere will never be without opportunity. Focus on value first, and reward will follow every time. Consistency is the quiet force behind every extraordinary result you admire. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. But over time, it produces outcomes so powerful, they look accidental to people who weren't paying attention. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. They look for breakthroughs, not realizing that breakthroughs are usually the result of small actions repeated long enough to reach a tipping point. Consistency compounds because progress is rarely dramatic in the beginning. Early effort feels unrewarded. Results are invisible. Motivation fades because the return seems too small. This is where most people stop. Not because consistency doesn't work, but because it hasn't worked yet. But consistency is not about immediate payoff. It's about delayed multiplication. Every small action is a deposit. One deposit doesn't feel significant. But repeated deposits create momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence fuels more action. And suddenly, what once felt insignificant becomes undeniable. Consistency removes pressure. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up. You don't need intensity every day. You need reliability. Showing up consistently, even imperfectly, outperforms sporadic excellence every time. This is why consistency is more powerful than talent. Talent without consistency fades. Intelligence without consistency stalls. Ambition without consistency burns out. But consistency turns average effort into uncommon results. Consistency also reshapes identity. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce trust with yourself. That trust compounds too. You stop doubting your ability to follow through. You stop needing motivation. You stop negotiating with resistance. The compound effect works whether you respect it or ignore it. Small negative habits repeated daily produce quiet damage. Small positive habits repeated daily produce quiet growth. Time magnifies both. Consistency is not glamorous. It doesn't trend. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't feel exciting. But it builds systems that don't rely on emotion. And systems outperform feelings. Most people quit right before consistency starts working. They misinterpret slow progress as failure. In reality, they're still in the accumulation phase. Growth is happening beneath the surface. Skills sharpening, habits forming, resilience strengthening. Consistency rewards patience. It favors those who are willing to look unimpressive while they're becoming unstoppable. When consistency becomes non-negotiable, results become predictable. You no longer hope for success. You expect progress. You no longer chase momentum. You generate it. This is why consistency compounds, because time becomes your ally instead of your enemy, because effort stacks instead of resets, because who you become in the process matters as much as what you achieve. Stay consistent long enough, and eventually the results speak so loudly that explanation becomes unnecessary. Every morning, you are given a choice before the world ever makes a demand on you. You can wake up on autopilot, repeating old patterns, old excuses, and old limits, or you can wake up with intention and decide who you are going to be that day. Identity first, responsibility over excuses, focus that creates power, discipline that outlasts motivation, value before reward, consistency that compounds. These are not ideas to admire. They are principles to live. And the difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck is not information, it's application. You don't need a new year. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need permission. You need to start telling yourself the truth every morning and then act like you believe it. Because the life you want is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in quiet decisions, repeated daily, without applause. So tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, check your standards. Before you listen to the world, listen to your values. Before you wait for motivation, move with discipline. Say the right things to yourself. Do the right things consistently. And over time, your results will have no choice but to change. Because when you change the conversation within, you change the direction of your life.